I heard it once said that that which we tolerate we cannot change. And we could see from that presentation the different arguments and reasonings that people had to justify the whole concept of abortion. And Satan, it says about Lucifer before he fell, it says he was perfect in wisdom. He was perfect as a guardian cherub of God's throne. He was perfect in wisdom until pride was found in his heart. And pride did something. It twisted the wisdom of Lucifer. And he's still very, very smart, but he's smart in a very twisted way. It's no longer the wisdom of God. And he has these very twisted, seemingly very wise arguments to justify all sorts of sin and depravity. And, there's a big lie coming across the Western world, this whole thing of tolerance at the moment. And, we agree that, we don't agree with going out and bashing up someone because they're gay. We don't even believe in verbally abusing them. You've got to love them as a person. But, biblical tolerance is not just sitting back and just allowing sin to go forth. And something's got to happen in the heart of the church because we're losing our nation. We're losing our nation morally. We're losing our nation ethically. Martin Luther said that the church isn't above the state, but we're not below the state. We're to be a conscience of the state. And when a conscience stops functioning correctly, when your conscience isn't functioning correctly, there's no longer that warning. There's no longer that scream saying, stop, don't do this. And you can sear your conscience, numb your conscience, and then you just go into unhindered sin in that area. And when the church's conscience dies, when the church of a nation goes silent and stops speaking out on issues, then the nation itself will go into unhindered sin. And what we are to be is we're to be a voice. We're to be a voice and a conscience for our nation. And we're to stop tolerating sin, and we need to start to rise up as the prophets of old, as Jesus Christ himself, and we need to start to confront evil. 1 million babies have been aborted in Australia. Okay, we saw 53 million in America. We've got a smaller population, but every year about 70 to 100,000 babies are aborted. And there's laws now in Victoria and in the ACT that allow abortion all the way up to the full term, which means a baby in the womb at 7, 8, 9 months, even what they call partial birth abortion. They partially birth the baby legs first, and they put scissors in the back of the head, make a hole, and then suck the living baby's brains out. Fully formed baby that could survive outside the womb. There's no way that you can justify these things, yet there's all of these arguments out there where people are justifying. And many in the church, we don't agree with it, but we're not speaking out against it. Okay, and we're going to be accountable before God as a church for what happens in our nation. If we remain silent in the public forum, I want you to think about Elijah. And we're told in Malachi that before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes, that God is going to send the prophet Elijah into the earth, and the prophet Elijah will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to the fathers, or else a curse will come on the land. And that prophecy was first fulfilled in John the Baptist. Luke chapter 1 tells us that clearly. Jesus told his disciples that actually John was Elijah. But he said, Elijah, when he comes, he will restore all things. Jesus said he's come, but when he comes, there's a past fulfillment and a future fulfillment. And I believe before the second coming of Jesus Christ, once again, into the earth, God is going to pour out the spirit and the power of Elijah. Wherever I'm going, I'm hearing the spirit and power of Elijah prophecies come forth as we draw closer and closer into the end times, that the original spiritual battle that went on between Elijah and Ahab, Jezebel and Baal worship is now in the earth today. And we the church need to rise up as Elijah did, a prophetic voice, being willing to be persecuted. My mother came to me and she's really worried because as I start stepping up and speaking out against abortion, speaking out against same-sex marriage, coming into the public forum, speaking out against these things, my mum was really scared and she said, Glenn, I'm really worried about you. You've gone too radical. You're too extreme. People will hate you. People, and I said, well, I'm not here for people to love me. And it's one problem in the church. We've focused too much on being nice. We're focused too much on trying to get people to like us to the point that we've compromised our stand in righteousness. You know, and I said to my mum, I said, well, when they crucified Jesus, did they crucify him on that cross because he was nice? No. He was prophetically correct. He wasn't politically correct, but he was speaking the truth in love. He was confronting sin. He was a threat. And people did not like that. And so that's why they crucified Jesus. You know, and I said, look at the apostles in the book of Acts. Wherever they went, especially the apostle Paul, every city they went into and they proclaimed the gospel fully, not just come to Jesus and get saved gospel. They proclaimed the gospel of the kingdom fully. And in just about every city there was riots. People got up and were stoning them and beating them and throwing them in prison. And it was said of those early apostles, these are the ones that are turning their whole world upside down. And we want to turn the world upside down for Jesus, but unless we have that apostolic heart, the heart of Jesus himself, that Elijah attitude, we're not going to turn our world upside down. We're not going to win the world by being nice. And I said this to them, when they were being stoned and beaten up as apostles, was it because they were going around trying to be nice and not trying to rock the boat? No, they were speaking out on issues. And so we've got to start to rise up. And there's something about the public arena. You know, the church, as Jesus said, we're to be the salt and the light. Salt is there to preserve. If you put salt in meat, it can preserve the meat so it doesn't rot, it doesn't decay. There's a purifying, preserving nature in salt. And Jesus said, if the salt loses its saltiness, it's good for nothing. Throw it out with the rubbish. And you see, what is it that the church would have salt? It's talking about a righteous standard and the light and the darkness, righteousness in a world of unrighteousness, that we have to have this righteous standard that would actually preserve the cities and the nations that we live in. But how can salt be effective if the salt is kept in the salt shaker? And we've got to break out of church being something that happens within four walls of a building. I praise God for this building. We prayed for it and prayed for it for years. And God, now we see the answer of prayer. This is awesome. We need buildings. I've got nothing against a building, but what I'm talking about is a mindset that we see church as something that happens within the four walls of a building. We have to take our salt, we have to take our message to the marketplace, and when we do, it is not going to be popular. Margaret Court, the leader of Victory Life Christian churches in Australia, it's quite a movement. Victory Life churches in Perth, and Margaret Court, a famous tennis player, but she's a strong Christian, and she's spoken out publicly against gay marriage. She's stood for traditional marriage. She disagrees with homosexuality. Her church ministers to these people. They have a counselling ministry that's helping them. They don't hate gay people, but they've spoken out against this sin, and she's been blasted all over the newspapers and all over the media. They're defaming her. And I said to my mother, you know, when she's really worried, and she said, but people won't like you, and your name might get in the media. And I said, Mum, you know what? If that has to happen, it's got to happen. If that's what it takes. And you see, there's too much fear in the church. There's fear of litigation. And Satan subtly is getting this stronghold over many in the church, the fear of litigation. You know, just imagine going up to Elijah and say, Elijah, if you say too much against Jezebel and the Baal worship, we'll take you to court. Just imagine he said, oh no, I better just be a bit more politically correct how I do this. I'll just pray in the wilderness more. We've got to actually get out. And that's what, we're doing a prayer rally where we will be in a building, but in the afternoon we're going to get out in the public forum. We're praying to God, myself and a number of other leaders from different churches and movements. We're praying to God to have more public forum type things where we can speak out publicly in a public arena on these issues. I'm actually in relationship right now with political activists that are speaking out in a public forum already. So there are those in the church that are rising up right now. But we want to see just not one, but many. Anyone here that is for same-sex marriage? Put your hand up if you think that we just need to legalise it. Okay? Anyone here that's against it? Okay? Think about this. Because he made this point there, which you might have just gone over your head. Imagine that you pray and you fast for 10 years against same-sex marriage. Then there's an election and you vote for someone that is pro same-sex marriage. You've nullified by your vote what you prayed for 10 years. There is no Christian in Australia, and this can be on my YouTube channel, no God-fearing Christian in Australia can ever vote for Labor until they overturn their national stance that they are pro same-sex marriage. You cannot be a born-again Christian, God-fearing, and actually vote Labor anymore. They've gone past a point. And we need to find out who our local members are, what they believe. There's a Queensland election coming up. The Australian Christian Lobby has invited Campbell Newman and Anna Bligh to come forward, that they're going to sit down with a number of leaders from different churches and they're going to be asked questions. Anna Bligh has refused to go. She's part of Emily's List, and Emily's List is an extreme feminist organisation. Julia Gillard is part of it. Quinton Bryce, our Governor General, is part of it, and they are pro same-sex marriage. They're pro abortion all the way up to full term. To be a member of Emily's List, you've got to push it through. And so, who here is in favour of abortion? Well, find out who your local member is, because if you vote in a pro-abortion person, then if a conscience vote comes in, they're going to vote. So I've covenanted with God, I will not vote for any party or any individual parliamentarian who is pro same-sex marriage or pro-abortion. You see, this is how it works. If we really, really believe what we say we believe, then we've got to actually start to act upon it.